In 1954, a pound of ground chuck cost 39 cents at the A&P, and your grandmother could stretch it into dinner for 6 without breaking a sweat. There was no slow cooker, no instant pot, no $30 meal kit left on the porch, just a cast iron skillet, a box of minute rice, and 15 minutes before Dad walked through the door. These weren't fancy meals. They were the quiet miracles of working-class American kitchens, from Cleveland row houses to Texas trailer parks. Number 14 on this list was on every church potluck table in 1962 and has completely vanished. And number 3 uses a trick food scientists now say creates a flavor reaction you can't get any other way. Hit subscribe, because these 30 forgotten ground beef dinners might just save your grocery bill. Let's count them down. Number 30, hamburger gravy on toast. Every Depression-era mother knew this one, and it survived into the 1960s under the nickname SOS. Your grandma browned half a pound of ground beef in a skillet, sprinkled 2 tablespoons of flour right over the sizzling meat, and stirred in a cup and a half of milk. In under 8 minutes, that pan turned into a creamy, peppery gravy thick enough to cling to a spoon. Ladled over 2 slices of toasted Wonder Bread, it fed a grown man for a quarter. The trick was salt and white pepper, never black pepper, so the gravy stayed pale and pretty. Cheap, hot, filling, and on the table before the news came on. Number 29, skillet goulash. Not the Hungarian kind. American goulash showed up in church cookbooks across Ohio and Pennsylvania in the 1950s, and it came together in one pan in 15 minutes flat. Brown a pound of ground beef with a chopped onion, then dump in a can of tomato sauce, a can of diced tomatoes, and 2 cups of pre-cooked elbow macaroni from last night's leftovers. Add a shake of garlic salt, a pinch of sugar to cut the acid, and you were done. Kids lined up for seconds. A pound of beef, a can of tomatoes, and 15 cents of macaroni fed a family of 5 for under $1. It vanished the day Chef Boyardee hit the shelves. Number 28, Sloppy Joes on Wonder Bread. Before Manwich convinced America that Sloppy Joes came from a can in 1969, every grandmother made them from scratch in about 11 minutes. Brown a pound of ground beef, drain the fat, then stir in a half cup of ketchup, a tablespoon of yellow mustard, a tablespoon of brown sugar, and a splash of Worcestershire. That was it. Pile it on soft hamburger buns or on Wonder Bread and watch it drip down your kids' wrists. Manwich spent millions telling mothers the homemade version was too much work. It was literally 4 ingredients and 1 pan. We forgot because a food company wanted us to. Number 27th, hamburger stroganoff. In 1952, Betty Crocker published a version that became a Tuesday night standard in half the homes in America. Brown 1 pound of ground beef with a sliced onion. Stir in a can of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup, a half cup of sour cream, and a spoonful of ketchup for color. Poured over egg noodles, it tasted like something out of a steakhouse. The secret was adding the sour cream off the heat so it would not curdle. A nickel's worth of noodles, a 30-cent can of soup, and ground beef turned into something that felt fancy enough for company. Try buying a restaurant stroganoff now for under $20. Number 26, rice-a-roni beef skillet. When rice-a-roni launched in San Francisco in 1958, mothers immediately figured out you could brown a pound of hamburger right in the skillet, then dump the rice mix and water on top. 15 minutes later, dinner. Add a can of green beans and you covered your vegetables too. The toasted vermicelli in the mix soaked up every drop of beef fat and turned golden brown, while the rice absorbed the meat juices. It was the original 1-pan meal, and it cost about 40 cents to feed 4 people in 1962. Modern meal kits charge $12 for the same idea in a cardboard box. Number 25. Tater Tot Skillet. Before tater tot hottish became a Minnesota church basement icon, farm wives made the stovetop version in one pan. Brown 1 pound of ground beef with onion, stir in a can of cream of mushroom soup and a can of green beans. Then scatter frozen tater tots across the top and cover with a lid. The steam from the soup cooked the tots from the bottom while the skillet crisped them up. 12 minutes, one pan, no oven heating up the kitchen in July. A bag of Ora-Ida cost 39 cents and made 2 dinners. This was survival cooking dressed up as comfort food, and it worked every time. Number 24. Taco Skillet Supper. Before Old El Paso sold you a dinner kit for $6, your mom made taco night for under $1. Brown a pound of ground beef, stir in a packet of Lori's taco seasoning, which cost a dime in 1967, and pile it onto warm corn tortillas with shredded iceberg, diced tomato, and a handful of grated Velveeta. The whole thing took 14 minutes from the moment the skillet hit the burner. No 15 separate packets. No dinner experience, just ground beef, spices, and cheese. Taco Bell was not even founded yet, and American mothers were already doing it faster and cheaper than any drive-thru will ever manage. Number 23. Cheeseburger Macaroni. Hamburger Helper launched in 1971, specifically to sell you the box version of what your grandmother had been making for 20 years. Brown a pound of beef. Then pour in 2 cups of milk, 1.5 cups of elbow macaroni, a tablespoon of ketchup, a teaspoon of mustard, and a handful of shredded cheddar. Cover the skillet and let it simmer for 12 minutes. The pasta cooked right in the sauce, absorbing every bit of flavor. General Mills made a fortune convincing us this required a dry seasoning packet. It required 6 ingredients you already had in the house and 15 minutes of attention. Number 22. Poor Man's Stew. This wasn't a real stew. It was a 15-minute skillet version your grandmother made when payday was still 3 days away. Brown a pound of ground beef with chopped onion, add a can of diced potatoes, a can of mixed vegetables, a can of tomato soup, and a splash of Worcestershire sauce. Simmer 10 minutes, done. It tasted like something that had been cooking all afternoon because the canned potatoes were already soft and the tomato soup thickened on contact with hot beef fat. Total cost in 1959, about 60 cents. Total time, 15 minutes. Total complaints from hungry children at the table, 0. Number 21, Beef and Cabbage Skillet. Every Polish grandmother in Chicago and Buffalo made this one when cabbage dropped to 4 cents a head in the fall. Brown 1 pound of ground beef with onion and garlic salt, then stir in half a head of shredded cabbage, a can of tomato sauce, and a handful of uncooked minute rice. Cover for 10 minutes. The cabbage wilted down to nothing, the rice plumped up, and you had stuffed cabbage flavor without any of the rolling, stuffing, or simmering. It was called Lazy Cabbage Rolls in a dozen church cookbooks, and it fed a family of 6 for about 75 cents. Fresh, hot, and ready before the kids finished their homework. Number 20. Quick porcupine meatballs. Traditional porcupine meatballs took an hour in the oven. Your grandmother's skillet version took 15 minutes. Mix 1 pound of ground beef with a half cup of uncooked minute rice, an egg, salt, and pepper. Roll into walnut-sized balls. Drop them into a skillet with a can of tomato soup and a soup can of water, cover, and simmer. The rice grains poked out as they swelled, giving the meatballs their porcupine look. The tomato soup thickened into gravy as the rice released its starch. A Depression-era trick that made a pound of meat feel like 2, served over mashed potatoes for about 50 cents. Number 19. Skillet lasagna. Long before one-pan pasta became a food blog trend, Your grandmother was making skillet lasagna in 1964. Brown 1 pound of ground beef, break 6 lasagna noodles into pieces right into the pan, pour in a jar of ragu and 2 cups of water, cover and simmer for 12 minutes. Dollop cottage cheese or ricotta across the top, scatter mozzarella, and let the lid trap the steam for 2 more minutes. The noodles cooked in the sauce, the cheese melted from the steam, and it tasted like baked lasagna without the oven. It fed 8 people for $1.10. Number 18. Johnny Marzetti. Named for a restaurant owner's brother in Columbus, Ohio, Johnny Marzetti ruled school cafeterias and church suppers from 1945 through the 1970s. Brown 1 pound of ground beef with onions and bell pepper, stir in a jar of spaghetti sauce and 2 cups of cooked elbow macaroni, top with shredded cheddar, and cover until the cheese melted. 11 minutes. Done. Ohio grandmothers still argue about whether it needs mushrooms or black olives. It was the Midwest's answer to goulash, and it disappeared when Stouffer's started selling frozen lasagna for $3 a tray. Johnny Marzetti originally cost 60 cents and fed more people. Number 17. Ground beef, chop suey. In the 1950s, every Better Homes and Gardens cookbook had a chop suey recipe that had absolutely nothing to do with Chinese food. Brown 1 pound of ground beef with a sliced onion and 2 stalks of celery. Add a can of bean sprouts, a can of chicken and rice soup, and 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Simmer for 8 minutes and serve over chow mein noodles from a can. It tasted like nothing you would find in any Chinese restaurant, but it tasted like Wednesday night in Milwaukee. $1 and change fed 5. La Choy sold millions of cans of bean sprouts on the back of this one dish. Number 16. Quick hamburger soup. When your grandmother needed to feed 8 people and had exactly a pound of beef in the fridge, this was her answer. Brown the beef with an onion, then pour in 2 cans of beef broth, a can of diced tomatoes, a can of mixed vegetables, and a handful of alphabet pasta. 12 minutes on the stove, and the whole kitchen smelled like a diner. The alphabet noodles were the whole reason kids ate it without complaining. Add salt, pepper, and a bay leaf if you were feeling fancy. 15 cents a bowl in 1961, and nobody left the table hungry. If you want the full collection, I put together a cookbook with 100 simple meals just like these. There is a link in the description below. Number 15. Homemade beefaroni. Chef Boyardee started selling canned beefaroni in 1958, and it became a punchline for cheap dinners. But the homemade version your grandmother made was ready in the same 15 minutes and tasted 10 times better. Brown a pound of ground beef, stir in a can of tomato sauce, a can of tomato soup, a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, and 2 cups of cooked elbow macaroni. Top with Parmesan from the green can. Done. It cost about 40 cents to make and tasted like the canned version's rich older cousin. Chef Boyardee spent decades advertising to kids so they would beg for the can instead of the pan. Number 14. Creamed beef on biscuits. Pop a tube of Pillsbury biscuits into the oven. While they bake for 10 minutes, brown 1 pound of ground beef, sprinkle in 2 tablespoons of flour, stir in 1 cup of milk and half a cup of beef broth, and season with salt, pepper, paprika, and a dash of kitchen bouquet for color. The gravy thickened in under 5 minutes. Split the hot biscuits open and ladle that rich, creamy beef gravy right over the top. This was Sunday supper after church for half of rural America. Total cost in 1963, under 80 cents. Total time, 15 minutes including the biscuits. Nobody makes it anymore, and that is a quiet tragedy. Number 13. Beef and noodles. Not stroganoff, not goulash. Just beef and noodles. The Indiana grandmother version. Brown a pound of ground beef with a chopped onion, pour in a can of beef broth and a can of cream of mushroom soup, stir in a bag of egg noodles, and simmer covered for 12 minutes. The noodles drank up the broth and turned silky. A dash of black pepper and a handful of frozen peas, and that was dinner. Farm wives across the Midwest made this 3 nights a week because it used what was already in the pantry and nobody complained. $1 fed 7. Try that at Panera. Number 12. Skillet shepherd's pie. No oven required. Brown a pound of ground beef with onion and a carrot grated on a box grater. Stir in a packet of brown gravy mix and a cup of water and add frozen peas and corn. While that simmers, whip up a box of instant mashed potatoes. Spread the potatoes over the beef right in the skillet, sprinkle with paprika, and cover for 3 minutes. The steam sets the potato layer. It looked like you'd spent an hour on it. You'd spent 14 minutes. British shepherd's pie takes an hour and 20 minutes. The American skillet version beat it to the table by 65 minutes. Number 11. Chili mac. Brown 1 pound of ground beef with chopped onion, then stir in a packet of chili seasoning, a can of kidney beans, a can of diced tomatoes, and 2 cups of pre-cooked elbow macaroni. Simmer for 6 minutes to let the flavors come together, then top with shredded cheddar and cover until it melts. This was the dish that launched 1,000 high school cafeteria trays, but the homemade version your mom made on a Monday night was richer, meatier, and did not come with a mystery lunch lady hairnet. 55 cents a serving in 1968. The leftovers tasted even better the next day, which is why they almost never survived the night. Number 10. Hamburger patties with onion gravy. Shape a pound of ground beef into 4 oval patties. Season heavily with salt and pepper and sear them in a hot skillet for 3 minutes per side. Remove the patties, then add a sliced onion and 1 tablespoon of flour. Stir the flour into the beef fat until golden, then pour in 1 cup of beef broth and a splash of Worcestershire sauce. Return the patties to the pan and let them simmer in that dark, glossy onion gravy for 4 minutes. Served over mashed potatoes, this was Salisbury steak before Swanson froze it into a television dinner tray. $1 fed 4. Number 9. Ground beef fried rice. Your grandmother did not call it fried rice. She called it using up the rice. Brown a pound of ground beef with a chopped onion. Push it to the side of the pan, crack 2 eggs into the empty half, and scramble them. Then stir in 3 cups of cold leftover rice, a handful of frozen peas and carrots, and 3 tablespoons of soy sauce. Toss it all together for 2 minutes over high heat. Done. It fed 6 people for about 60 cents, and kids who refused to eat plain rice devoured it. Grandma did not need a wok. Her cast iron skillet was the wok. Number 8. Beef enchilada skillet. Cut 6 corn tortillas into strips. Brown a pound of ground beef with onion and taco seasoning. Stir in a can of red enchilada sauce and the tortilla strips. Top with shredded Colby Jack, cover, and cook for 4 minutes until the cheese melts into stringy puddles. It tasted exactly like baked enchiladas, without the rolling, without the oven, and without the 45-minute cooking time. A can of Old El Paso enchilada sauce cost about 20 cents in 1970. The whole skillet served 5 for under $1. Modern frozen enchiladas charge $7 for 4 lukewarm tubes. Number 7. Hobo skillet. Born from the Depression-era tradition of hobo foil packets cooked over a campfire, the skillet version hit American kitchens in the 1950s. Brown 1 pound of ground beef with 1 diced onion. Add 1 can of diced potatoes, 1 can of corn, 1 can of green beans, and 1 packet of brown gravy mix, plus 1 cup of water. Simmer for 10 minutes until everything has melded into a thick, savory one-pan supper. Children called it everything dinner because it was a complete meal, meat, starch, and vegetables, for about 70 cents in 1962. It disappeared when families stopped eating at the same table. Number 6, beef and hominy. Southwestern grandmothers swore by this one, and you will never see it on a restaurant menu. Brown a pound of ground beef with onion, chili powder, and cumin, then stir in a can of white hominy with its liquid, a can of Rotel tomatoes, and a handful of shredded pepper jack. Simmer for 8 minutes. The hominy turns plump and chewy, soaking up the spiced beef fat like little corn sponges. Served with warm flour tortillas or eaten with a spoon, this dish fed a family of 5 on a New Mexico ranch for about 50 cents. Hominy costs less than rice and keeps you fuller longer. Nobody remembers it anymore. Number 5, pizza burgers. In 1971, every grade school kid in America wanted pizza burgers, and every mother knew how to make them in 12 minutes. Brown a pound of ground beef with Italian seasoning, drain the fat, stir in a half cup of pizza sauce and a handful of chopped pepperoni. Spoon the mixture onto split English muffins, top with shredded mozzarella, and slide under the broiler for 3 minutes until bubbly. They tasted like pizza, hamburger, and garlic bread all at once. This was the dinner kids actually begged for. Cost per serving was about 40 cents. Cost to order pizza today for 4 people is $35. Number 4, ground beef hash, not corned beef hash. This was the version your grandmother made on Thursday night when she needed to use up leftover boiled potatoes. Dice 3 cold boiled potatoes into small pieces. Brown 1 pound of ground beef with onion and a diced bell pepper, then stir in the potatoes and press everything flat against the bottom of the skillet. Let it cook undisturbed for 4 minutes so the bottom crisped into a brown crust. Flip it in sections and do it again. Top each plate with a fried egg. This was diner food made at home for 60 cents. That crisp brown crust is something no frozen skillet meal has ever managed to replicate. Number 3, the Lipton onion soup skillet. Here is the one food scientists say is genius. When Lipton launched its dehydrated onion soup mix in 1952, grandmothers immediately figured out you could brown a pound of ground beef, sprinkle on a packet of the soup mix, add a cup of water, and simmer for 8 minutes. The dehydrated onions rehydrated into sweet, jammy bits. The beef bouillon in the packet created what food scientists now call glutamate amplification. The sodium and umami compounds hit the browned meat proteins and produced a flavor that registers to the tongue as cooked for hours. A packet of onion soup cost 19 cents and turned a pound of ground beef into something that tasted like a French dip sandwich. Pour it over toasted bread with Swiss cheese on top, and you had the cheapest gourmet dinner in America. Lipton sold billions of packets on the strength of this one hack, and then modern recipes forgot it existed. Number 2, taco salad skillet. Not the fancy tortilla bowl kind. The Midwestern grandmother version made with Doritos. Brown 1 pound of ground beef with taco seasoning, drain, and let it cool for 2 minutes. In a big bowl, toss shredded iceberg lettuce, diced tomato, a can of drained kidney beans, shredded cheddar, the warm beef, and a handful of crushed nacho cheese Doritos. Dress it with half a cup of Catalina or French dressing. The warm beef wilted the lettuce slightly, the Doritos stayed crunchy, and the sweet dressing tied it all together. This was every church potluck in Iowa in 1978. Total cost for a family, about $1.25. Number 1, One-pan spaghetti. The number one forgotten 15-minute ground beef dinner, the dish that fed more American families than any other on this list. Brown a pound of ground beef with a chopped onion and 2 cloves of minced garlic. Without draining, add a pound of broken spaghetti noodles right into the pan, a jar of marinara, 4 cups of water, and a teaspoon of salt. Cover and simmer for 10 minutes, stirring twice. The pasta cooked right in the sauce. The starch from the noodles thickened everything into a silky, clinging sauce that coated every strand. Top with Parmesan. No colander, no second pot, no wasted starch water. 1 skillet, 15 minutes, $1, and change to feed 6. Your grandmother was doing one-pan pasta 40 years before Martha Stewart claimed to invent it in 2013. The technique was never lost at your grandmother's stove. It was just quietly erased from cookbooks when brands wanted you buying jarred Alfredo and microwave bowls instead. If you want the full collection of these forgotten 15-minute dinners, I put together a cookbook with 100 simple meals, and the link is right below this video. Here is my challenge. Pick one of these 30 dashes this week. Just one. The Lipton onion skillet, the homemade beefaroni, the creamed beef on biscuits. Make it the way your grandmother would have made it. Then come down to the comments and tell me which one you tried and whether it beat anything you could buy in a box. Because these were not just dinners. They were proof that a pound of ground beef, 15 minutes, and a little know-how could feed a whole family for pocket change. Your grandmother knew. Now you know too.